Hello, welcome to Unity of Fredericksburg. My name is Bev Raymond, and I am pleased to welcome all of you to the Unity of Fredericksburg weekly online gathering. At Unity of Fredericksburg, we are advancing the movement of spiritual awakening and transformation through unity, a positive path for spiritual living. We thank those of you watching on YouTube live or later and invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you are able to attend live, we encourage you to join us in the Zoom community room for the full Sunday morning experience, including music, prayer, and connection. Our weekly newsletter includes the Sunday service link, and you can subscribe to receive that on our website at uofva.org. For everyone local to Central Virginia, Unity of Fredericksburg offers a variety of fun and enriching in-person gatherings every month. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter at uofva.org for all of the details. Our message and meditation today comes from Reverend Richard Pacheco, an ordained Unity minister, speaker, teacher, author, coach, and technology consultant dedicated to helping people live practical, spirit-centered lives. He serves as the webmaster for Unity Urban Ministerial School and teaches the Technology and Media in Ministry certification program. He brings decades of experience in ministry leadership, digital communications, and education. Reverend Rich is the author of 6 teen journals and 3 adult guided journals focused on spiritual growth, emotional healing, self-worth, relationships, and forgiveness. He is also the host of the podcast Take That Truth and Walk With It, and Metaphysics at the Movies, where he blends unity principles, biblical wisdom, and everyday life into engaging, practical conversation. He's a certified life and relationship coach, a Reiki master teacher, and a transformational speaker. Reverend Rich is passionate about equipping individuals and organizations with tools for healing, intentional living, and authentic spiritual growth. His mission is to help people discover who they truly are, live with purpose, and bring their highest selves into every encounter. And so now here is Reverend Richard.
Thank you. And again, thank you for inviting me to speak. It's funny because I always hear those, I hear that introduction and it's like, now you know why I tell people just call me the tech guy, because it's just too much. And it also brings up imposter syndrome, which brings us to our talk today. Because one of the things I had to realize is that's work I have to do on myself. And if one thing I want you to take home with you today is that awareness always comes before transformation. And for me to transform myself from that, I have to do the work. And that's what we're going to speak about today. So before anything, I always like to do 2 things. And the first thing is pray in. So if you would join me, if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, if not, a soft gaze to the floor, as we take a moment and take a breath, knowing that we are in this presence of love, this presence of peace, this presence of gratitude. As we say thank you for allowing me to be here today, I say thank you for everyone who is present here today. And we remind ourselves of the words of the Deuteronomists who tell us that may my message drip like the rain, my speech distill as the dew, like gentle rain upon the tender grass and like showers upon the herbs, not only for those listening, but for myself as well. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen. Now, one of the things that always I start all my talks with is what I call my 3 rules. First rule is don't believe a word I say. And those words came from a book called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. And I think it rings true here at Unity because we are practical Christianity. It's not enough to just know what we're talking about. It's not enough to take the truth we're talking about, but the fact that we need to practice that truth. So all I can do today is share my experiences, share my teachings, and it's up to you to prove that they're true for yourself. Second thing is if you hear something today, write it down, whether it's on a pen, take a pen and paper. I also give homework if nobody's told you that yet. So make sure you have something to write with, as well as you can put it in your phone. But either way, always remember that the shortest pencil is better than the longest memory. And finally, share what you hear, whether it's me or any person speaking here, because you never know when that one human touch can change a life. Even if it doesn't work for you, you never know who you can bless today. So with that being said, let's move into our topic today. So I talked about doing the work and being aware. So we are on a theme of intentional living and moving with that intention, which requires action. So I don't know if this ever happened to you. I know it happened to me a lot of times. So when I was living in Northeast Pennsylvania, I used to work for a hosting company up in there was like Mountaintops, Drums area of Pennsylvania. And I used to have the choice of either taking the highway to work or driving the back streets. So now a lot of times after my day is done, I get in my car, I drive out of the parking lot, I know I'll make a left, and I make my decision. Okay, I'm going through the back streets. And I start driving and I'm hitting every light. Apparently, I'm hitting my signals, which most people don't do nowadays. And I'm driving and I'm driving and I'm driving, and then all of a sudden the thoughts start. It could have been something that happened at work. It could have been thinking about my kids. I'm thinking about something that happened at home. Maybe it's a conversation that could have gone differently. My mind is just going off. And when I finally come out of the stupor, I'm parked in front of my house. How did that happen? How many times have we realized that our bodies made the trip, but our minds didn't quite get there at the same time? How many times have we walked into another room and step into that next room and go, oh, why did I come in this room again? As a tech guy, will say the Wi-Fi was working better in the other room where I did remember what I needed to do. So when that happens to us, it's kind of funny when we go to a grocery store and we forget, we step in another room, we forget, we're having a conversation, and we have a momentary blink. But it's not so funny when we're living in that same process as our body's in full motion. It's doing all types of things, but our mind is not catching up. Sometimes we wake up and we're wondering, it's been 5 years. Why am I still here? Sometimes we look in the mirror and we ask ourselves, how did I get here? And it's not always something dramatic that happens, but life happens. But sometimes it's when we live unintentionally a day at a time. We just go with the motions. So, a famous quote from Socrates says, the unexamined life is not worth living. And I'm pretty sure he didn't mean that to beat ourselves up, but to understand that when we take the time to examine who and what we are doing, and where we are now, and accept that this is where we are and this is where we can go from, and get ourselves out of that perpetual motion where our subconscious mind is just driving the car while the rest of us are just spectators, we can find that intentional life that we want. And this is where we begin the work. So again, I want you to remember that awareness always comes before the transformation. So when we think of ourselves, I want to suggest something. One of the things is we don't want to beat ourselves up. We want to be gentle about it. We want to think about how many people are living in this perpetual life. And we don't do it, even though we say it's intentional, it's unintentional, but we're not doing it to hurt ourselves. A lot of times we're just becoming busy. You know, we don't, a lot of people will think that it's because, we look for the blame. God is not doing something for us. And we know that that's never the case. We think that it's somebody else outside of us. Some people think, look at and judge other people and say it's just they don't care. That's why they're acting that way. But I like to think of it as we have just become a busy nation. I tell people my schedule and the things that I'm doing, the ministries I'm helping, the teaching, the everything that's going on. And they look at me like, how do you do it? But I also had to come to my own self and find an intentional life to be able to say, okay, my children want to talk to me. Stop. I need to take a break. Stop. So when we look at our own lives, we know that it's not that anyone doesn't care, it's just we've become that busy. We've raising families. I have 4 children. Two of them are adults, so I can still call them children. We're paying bills, we're answering emails, we're putting out fires in our day. We're busy trying to survive in this world. I'm not working a 9 to 5 before, but I also had a full-time job a couple of months ago. And before long, we're just in that rotation of alarm clock, get up, we try to do some spiritual work, we do this, we keep moving, we do that, go to sleep, we alarm clock, and we keep doing that. And what happens is our subconscious mind begins to drive that car. So before long, we're living by habit instead of intention. And that's why when we look at our way shower Jesus, Jesus asked many questions during his time, even though he already knew the answer. So let's think about Mark 10:51, where the blind man, he asks him, what do you want me to do for you? Now, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory why the blind man came to Jesus. But he was asking the question because he wanted to move people into intentions. Matthew 8:26, when he spoke to the people and said, why are you afraid? John 5:6, when the man was by the pool, do you want to be made whole? And as I said, Jesus already knew the answers, but he wanted them to know their why. And today I think Jesus would ask the same question. Are you awake to your own life? Let's take a moment here. Just breathe real quick. If you feel necessary to close your eyes while you think about that. Are you awake to your own life? And be gentle with yourself, whatever the answer is, because like many of us, we have to have that awareness. We have to become aware of where we are in life and what we want to go forward to. Things happen that even in my life had to happen to wake me up to my own life on where my passions lied. In Romans 12:22, we all know the phrase, and I always said if I ever have a brick and mortar, that would be behind the stage, is do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I want you to become aware of that verse because there's nowhere in that verse that says, oh, well, you need to change your habits, you need to do this, you need to read more, do more, take more classes, go find a better job, whatever. It says we must be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And transformation starts in our consciousness before it shows up in our conduct. If you've ever taken metaphysics and used the book Heart-Centered Metaphysics, there's a chart that talks about the levels of consciousness. Victim meaning it's happening to me, victor meaning it's me, victor meaning by me, excuse me, verity, vessel meaning through me, and then finally verity meaning as me. But each level of consciousness brings us to that space that we can find a way to move into that intentional living. Charles Fillmore says, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. And I know personally, and I'm sure some of you are sitting there nodding your head going, yep, yep. When we start to begin to produce these thoughts, things start happening in our lives. I think it was Michael Bernard Beckwith who said it best. He said, worry is nothing more than attracting into your life what you didn't want in the first place. So the question isn't, why am I living this way? The question should be, what am I consciously thinking? Excuse me, what am I constantly thinking? What is that thought that's in your head? What is that mantra you hear over and over in your mind? I've got one, got to yell at it every so often. Thank you for being here, but you got to move on. What is that mantra? What is it constantly going through your mind right now? Because when your consciousness is focused on that, you naturally follow that. We all know this saying, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And we know when we talk about the heart in unity, we're talking about that subconscious mind, that part of you that has become your personality, that part of you that's been programmed by the growth in this world. And we're being bombarded from all levels. And as I tell many people that I coach, let's stop blaming the parents, the teachers, the jobs, and all that, because you know what? They did the best they could with what they knew. But that information still came into our subconscious and became that ego sense, which drives the bus, so to say. When we continuously allow into our consciousness, eventually expresses itself as our experience. And that's when we start to think about the things that are happening. So one of my favorite stories, and it's funny because at the top of the whole story, or the how do I say it? Out of the whole story, excuse me, there's one line that really speaks to me, and that's the prodigal son. So in the prodigal son, of course, we have the father who is asked to give his inheritance to his son now so he can go out, and we'll just paraphrase. He said, he wants to go clubbing, he wants to go hang out, he wants to go spend some money, he wants to look like he's Big Willie out there, and finally shows up and finds that he's ran out of money. Now you have the older son at the end, which is, well, father, you're throwing this big party when the son comes back. Why is it? So now here's another lesson of, I have always been there for you. And this is a whole lesson on presence and God. But the part that always, and it literally changed my life because it was Wayne Dyer who pointed that out. And I sit there going, 14 years of Catholicism, I've never heard this verse as he said it. And it was, he came to himself. And that was in Luke 15:17. And of course, the whole story there is that he's eating slop, he's sleeping in the fields, he's homeless. I mean, today's he's eating out of dumpsters and garbage cans, and he's sleeping in the alleyways. And he realizes that in his father's house, even the servants are living and eating better. And he had to come to himself. He had to have the awareness of what he was doing and say, I need to do better. And that line changed my life many years ago because I realized I had to stop looking outside of myself. I had to stop the allowing of the bombardment into my subconscious and start to focus on that inner Christ within me. So before the son went back to the father, he had to change his awareness. He had to wake up to who he truly was and who his father truly was and what his environment truly was before he can move back to where he could be. And every transformation begins there. So awareness always comes before the transformation happens. Charles Fillmore wrote, the first step in spiritual development is awakening. And the word awakening is where intentional living begins. So let's think about a plane. And on this plane, and I used to live in New York City, regretfully 9/11 displaced me. But I lived in Manhattan, but I decided I'm flying from New York to Los Angeles, which I actually did once. Now, as the plane is flying, you know that sometimes the plane, even though it has a full direction, it changes. It may go off by 1 degree. Now, sitting in the plane, you never notice that. You'd have to watch the electronics to know, okay, we're off by a degree. And you probably could fly a couple of minutes, 30 minutes, half an hour, and still not notice. But after a couple of hours of that 1 degree being off, you'll notice that you're completely off track. Where he was heading to Los Angeles, he may be on his way to Washington State right now. But it all happens in small increments. And we have to realize that life works exactly the same way. Extraordinary lives aren't usually built by the extraordinary decisions. They are built by thousands of small intentional decisions, small intentional actions that take us to where we are. If I can recommend two books I read before I even knew there was a unity that I think illustrate this best, was one, Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, where he used the illustration of two people, one eating healthy, one eating McDonald's every day. And for a while there, they both looked normal, but sooner or later, if the person eating McDonald's isn't trying to stay as healthy as he can, we'll start to see a decline. And the person eating healthy, of course, would see a better health lifestyle. And that's what the illustration he uses in his book. Second book is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Same thing. Small individual decisions and actions can change things around you. So I did tell you about homework, right? So I'm going to give you a little bit of homework this week. And again, I'll be here next week. So the homework you're doing this week is going to lead into what we're going to talk about next week. So my invitation this week is, I do not want you to try to fix your life by Tuesday. Just wake up in the morning, and before you grab that phone, before you do anything else, just take a pause. And I want you to take an intentional breath, just a nice, and just release the evening. Your brand new morning, sun probably up. And then once you feel present in that moment, I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. First of all is, what am I feeling in this moment? And I don't want you to let the stories start to come in. I want you to take a moment, be present in that moment, and truly answer yourself, how am I feeling? Not how you should be feeling, but how am I feeling? Once you've answered that for yourself, and again, be honest with yourself, is ask yourself, what has my intention today? So even though I ask you to be present, we all know that during meditation, thoughts come running in. And a lot of times, if you woke up into a state of worried about something that happened yesterday, or you're anxious about something that might happen in the future, those thoughts may come in, and you want to see that awareness of, what am I focused on today? What is my attention looking at today? And then finally, the last question is, what's one intentional choice I can make today that reflects who I truly am? And again, we want to make sure we're staying in this Christ presence. We're trying to find that true self. And please be gentle if the question starts going off, because the goal is not to find out what fear is telling us to be. It is not what something in the past is telling us we should have been, or what the future may turn us into. We want to know today what intentional choice I can make that reflects who I truly am. We could say what God has created me to be. And then I want you to spend a minute in prayer. Maybe it's as simple as saying, Great Spirit, help me awake today. Help me notice you already at work. As I say, I can see the God in you. You can see the God in me. It's already in work in ourselves. And I love how Reverend Ike says the God in me. It helped me to kind of release that embedded theology from Catholicism and the God out there. And it helped me see that. So at times in my prayer, I may say, I thank you, God in me, that you are guiding me to that next path. So spend a minute in prayer after you answer those questions. And then what I want you to do is, at the end of the day, see, I know most of you are out there going, this fluffy minister that got on screen is giving me too much to do. But trust me, if you're willing to do the work, you will see it. At night, I want you to say and list three things. And the third thing is going to be done three times only because I like the number three. Today, I noticed is the first question. So, what did you notice today after doing the work? Today, I choose. Today, I chose, excuse me. What did you choose to do intentionally? And then finally, write down three things you're grateful for. Because I guarantee you, if you're in that intentional mode, you will see gratitude. So these are all small choices you're going to make, and you're going to take them just like my Reiki teacher taught us, just for today. One day at a time, one moment at a time. And you'll see that slight edge, that compound effect, as they call it, or that intentional small detail every day. Howard Thurman wrote, "Do not ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it." You can't live when things aren't making you come alive if you're asleep at your own life. And as I said before, awakening always comes before the transformation happens. We need to see those small steps in action, and that's what's important. Because it's not enough to know this truth that I'm teaching right now, but you must live that truth we know. So I want you to imagine now with me what happens is every one of us begins living this way. Imagine if families where people actually listen instead of hearing and just awaiting to answer. Imagine marriages where love is intentional rather than assumed. Imagine workplace where kindness becomes the choice instead of by accident. Imagine a church filled with people who aren't just showing up on Sunday, but living fully in their intentional God-given life all week long, every day. That's how we begin to live an extraordinary life. That's how we begin to help people live an extraordinary life. And that's how the world starts to reach the potential of a life well lived. And it's not by jumping a great giant leap. It's done one intentional choice, then another, then another. And as Jesus said, those who are faithful in very little are faithful in much. And of course, that's Luke 16:10. Maybe the extraordinary life that you've been praying for doesn't begin with one big moment. I've hit rock bottom a few times, and that's what hit me over the head to finally make a change. Let not that happen to you today. Find that awareness, make that choice, do the work. Because it could begin tomorrow morning when you start doing these exercises. And it may start with just one intentional thought, one intentional choice, and one intentional action. So, as always, as my podcast name, I say, I hope I've given you enough truth to work with this week, and I hope that you take that truth and walk with it. So, with that, I am grateful for being here. So, let's go ahead and take it into meditation. So, if you're so moved, just please close your eyes with me and just center yourself in this moment. I know we've heard a lot. We may have triggered a few things in ourselves. I know when I learned this, I felt triggered. So take a deep breath, nice cleansing breath, and just release it, allowing any worry or anxiety of anything that's not in this present moment that no longer serves us to just be released. We're going to take another deep breath in, just breathing in that love that I feel through this screen, that peace that may be feeling in some of you right now. And just breathe out anything else that's not serving you. And finally, one last deep breath as we come into this present moment. This substance, as Eric Butterworth tells us, that we are the potters at the wheel, knowing that this love and peace we feel right now is what we call God. And it is in this presence that we become whole. With that being said, let's look at ourselves in this moment, and I'm going to give you a little bit of time with each one. And I want to ask yourself in this present moment, what am I feeling? Be honest, but be gentle with yourself. What am I feeling at this moment? And now that we've answered that question for ourselves, let us ask ourselves, what has my attention today? Maybe halfway through my talk, your mind went to some problem you're having, or maybe a family member who may be challenged, or maybe something in yourself. What has your attention today? Again, be honest and be gentle. And now let's move into that space where we ask ourselves, what intentional choice can I make today that helps me move toward who I truly am in this space? I'll read that one more time. What intentional choice can I make today that helps me become who I truly am? And again, be gentle with yourself. We don't need to solve all your problems by midnight tonight. We're looking for one intentional choice, one intentional action that you can take today. And if that choice has not shown up yet, that's okay. Be gentle with yourself. You'd be surprised how you'll go through your day today knowing, just listening, feeling, and something will pop up and be like, aha, that's what he was talking about. So let's just take a deep breath. And if any of this felt heavy for you, just release it. Just know. And we know as we're in this presence of divine love that all that we manifest, all that we think about, all that we feel in this presence becomes manifest into our world. So by being gentle and loving with ourselves as we work through this, we know we are being guided. And whatever blessing you're looking for, it's already done because we say it isn't so it isn't so we let it be. When we bring our attention back to this room, back to this space, knowing that we are in a room of love, and we release this. We release it with gratitude in our heart, gratitude in our mind, and that peace that we can go with. And so it is. When you feel ready, open your eyes. And I just want to say thank you for having me. I will be sticking around, but I hope that you got something from today's talk.
Thank you, Reverend Richard. That was wonderful. And thank you to everybody for watching the weekly broadcast from Unity of Fredericksburg. Please visit our website at ufva.org to learn about our mission of spiritual awakening and transformation and support our ministry with your financial donation. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.